green room, if you like, in the sort of tea room at Woodchester Mansion, when a Kit Kat flew off a shelf and flew into the middle of the room and just landed there, and the three of us just looked at one another, and Phil picked it up and ate it. But we told Carl and Yvette, but Yvette said nobody would ever believe us. So for those who say most haunted's fake, well, you know, there's a lot to be said on that, and I'm not going to for the moment. But what I will say is that, in fact, you know, on that occasion, they deliberately didn't show something that definitely did occur to us. Whether there was a logical cause or not, I don't know. But anyway, these ghost hunting groups, they go to haunted houses. Now, there are some classic haunted houses. One of them is Siddiston Parsonage in Norfolk, where for about 150 years there was a continual changeover of occupants. Obviously, there was no continuous tradition, but we have diary and journal entries which seems to suggest that a similar kind of hauntings and similar kind of figures were seen over a very long time. And there are other places in the UK where this appears to be true. A few years ago I looked at Warwick Castle, and one of the things I did there was I looked at what the ghosts were reported in 1994, and then I looked at the accounts of the ghosts that were reported on the Most Haunted show, which would have been about 2006, 2007. And I found that, you know, there was evolution. Some stories had been forgotten, some stories had changed, some stories were completely new. The emphasis changes. So yeah, these are evolving traditions, but in some cases we do seem to have an attested history of haunting. However, when you look at the census of hallucinations, the majority of ghost cases aren't like that. They're not, you know, a lady in black seen walking down the same corridor every Shrove Tuesday at midnight, or something like that. There are some like that, but it's a very, very, very unusual to find that. It's not even the, you know, the usual haunted house scenario we're all familiar with knocking, thumping, footsteps, and the other stories. You know, we've all lived in an eerie house, I'm sure, and not been certain whether it was just the rats in the walls, not Lovecraft's rats in the walls, if it was the rats in the walls or if it was something else. The important bit about this was that, you know, the experiences that are reported in actual studies by the SPR, by myself, and I believe by Becky, though she's not analysed her data yet, she's still collecting it. I can't tell you until she can tell me. But the thing that's coming out of this is that a lot of these experiences are personal. Some are just, I saw a figure, I didn't know where it went, it could have been a real person. Well, you can probably disregard that straight away. Some of it is, it probably was a real person. I'm sorry, you know, Occam's razor, I know I need a shave, but at the end of the day, if it's that simple to explain, that the most likely cause is it was a real person. Occasionally, though, you do get these cases where somebody sees a figure and they didn't know who it was. But I would say in the majority of cases, or a large number of cases, the figure is someone they know. And sometimes it follows a bereavement, not always. And we do know, there was a very famous paper in 1974 published in the Lancet called, I think it's something like The Hallucinations of Widowhood. But yeah, the idea was that widows and widowers in Wales were studied in one GP's practice, and he discovered that a very high proportion either felt, sensed, or actually saw and conversed with their dead loved ones. And there has been some research done since, not a great deal, but some research which seems to back this up, this idea that at times of great grief we can feel and see, and the suggestion is that this is a hallucinatory coping mechanism. I'm not convinced, actually. I think it might be something else. But this is what I'm getting, and this is the problem, because these are deeply personal things. Quite often the apparition only makes sense to the person, or it serves a purpose in that person's life. So if it is psychologically manufactured, and that is of course entirely possible, then it is entirely possible that what we're looking at is something that's integral to that person's psyche, either generated by it as a hallucination, or, if you want to take the spiritualist hypothesis, that the ghost is actually returning for a purpose to them. In which case, sitting around in ye olde haunted McDonald's or ye olde haunted inn or whatever might be a waste of time if the spirit has no reason to converse with us. I'm just saying, you know, critically, looking at the evidence, the majority of cases occur not when people are looking for ghosts. They occur spontaneously, they occur for perhaps for a reason, and they tend to be deeply personal to the individual. Hey. Well, I'm not saying ghost hunting is worthless. I would joke and say EMF meters are worthless. I'll never get over the time when I watched a guy following around. Don't know what kind of EMF meter he had, but he seemed to be able to pick up his mobile phone transmission on it. And his mobile phone was in his chest pocket. Maybe it was some other item, I don't know, but I think it was his phone. And whenever he brought the EMF meter close to himself, it went beep, 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 and he became convinced that he was being pursued by a ghost. Indeed, eventually the ghost had entered him. Caused me great amusement, but I'm a cynic. Anyway, back to the plot. So what are ghosts? I've already said that the idea that they're the spirits of the dead is an ancient one, and one that we've had, well, it's been with us since probably the earliest communities. What else could a ghost be? In the 1880s, the Society for Psychical Research, or what became parapsychology, tended to actually play down the spiritualist hypothesis. They were not keen on the notion of ghosts as dead people. Instead, they believed they'd found experimental evidence for something called telepathy. Now, telepathy is a form of ESP, it's mind-to-mind contact. And all of the theories that came out of these reports on the sense of hallucinations tended to revolve around telepathic explanations. So no afterlife, no God, no demons, no supernatural as such. They actually went for what they saw as a scientific explanation. And, well, what have we got? Edmund Gurney. He was interested particularly in what we call crisis apparitions. Now, a crisis apparition is, imagine that, someone's gone off to war and there's been a terrible tragedy, and then a relative at home sees the young man or young woman come walking down the drive. This is the classic crisis apparition, and they look all